Hi everyone, how you doing? Dan here, and today I've got another video for you. This time we're going to have a look at the GoPro 9 and we're going to learn how to make it look as good as possible. We're going to look at different shooting modes such as cinematic, slow motion, standard and a couple of others, and we're going to get right into all the settings with the Protune options. So if you've come over from Instagram, thank you very much, I do greatly appreciate it, and if you're one of my new subscribers or all subscribers on YouTube, thank you very much for subscribing. It honestly does mean the world to me, and it's really encouraging that I'm seeing the YouTube channel grow a little bit. So let's keep that up. If you do like the videos, please like, comment and subscribe, and it keeps me going to make more videos. So there'll be more drone videos, GoPro videos, a couple more for shot bucket list videos. I went out to get the Kingfisher again this weekend, so you'll have to see if I caught it or not, and after that we're going to be doing a lot more too. Thank you very much for interacting with the channel, it honestly does mean the world to me. But let's jump in today's video and get the best settings on your GoPro Hero 9. So I've got my phone set up here so we can film the GoPro and you can see all the settings what I'm going to be going through. So let's just power it on. Oh, so there I am. Hello. You'll see me on the phone screen in the video. Let's have a look at the settings. So let's go into video mode because that's what we're going to be looking at today. So the idea is how to get these settings as looking as cinematic as possible and to get the most out of your GoPro. There's some settings on the GoPro Hero now which kind of almost limit your creative control, especially when you get to post-production. So this video is mainly about turning these off so we get ultimate control when we come to editing. So first of all, we'll have a look at my standard settings. So these are my settings which I pretty much use 90% of the time on my GoPro. When I'm doing my bucket shot list videos, these are the settings I have. So when it's on my bike or on my chest, these are what we're looking at. So if we just tap on this, you can then go and customize your settings. So I've got 4K 25. Now I've got 25p because I'm living in England and my work is produced here. Now, if I'm shooting something for online, I do tend to change that to the American NTSC setting in the options, just so I can get more frame rates out. And the majority of content what is uploaded online does end up being 30 frames a second. But if I am shooting something for here and I'm delivering it to someone, I do shoot at 25 FPS and 4K just so I've got room to crop. I don't shoot 5K in standard because I don't need that much room to change my shot, and also you lose your Superview, which I like to use. So yeah, my lens is Superview just so I get as wide as view as possible. And I do have the boost on the Hypersmooth just to make things look as smooth as possible. I don't have anything with the scheduled capture, duration or Hindsight, but the Hindsight, it would be quite useful. So is what this does is it'll record 15 seconds before you press the record button and 15 seconds after. This is great, you know, if you're bird watching or if you're out on the sea and a whale jumps up and you didn't press record quick enough, this will allow you to capture the last 15 seconds, which is quite useful, but I just don't really see the need for needing that at the moment. I've got the timer off and the zoom off too. Now these Protune settings are pretty much the same for all of my presets, and this is where you can really start to make your GoPro look extremely good and cinematic. I have my bitrate on high. Now the reason I have it on high is so there's more data to edit with when I bring it into post-production. It means there's more control over the colour correction and colour grading, which I highly recommend. Now at the moment I've got my shutter set to auto, but when I do get my ND filters, that will be constantly set to double my frame rate, regardless of what it is. And my EV comp, I've got that set to 0.5, just because when I'm outside filming with the GoPro, I sometimes think it overexposes a little bit too much. So this just allows me to bring the exposure down a tad, and I can lift it in post if I need to. I'd rather lift a darker scene in post than compress the brightness down. It tends to be a bit more data in the shadows rather than highlights. So that's why I've got that there. I've got my white balance set at 5500. Now, depending on where I am, I do a manual white balance. The reason I do a manual white balance, if you've got the GoPro in automatic, the white balance can sometimes fluctuate and it's very hard to correct in post-production. It means it requires a lot of work. So if you just set your white balance when you're outside, 55 is normally great for outside, but it does depend on the time of day. But I will change that if I need to, but never in auto, just in case it starts to fluctuate on its own. I've got my ISO minimum at 100 because I want it as low as possible, and I've got my max ISO at 400. In darker situations I will put this up to 800, but for most things, especially when shooting outside, 400 is more than good enough. The higher you put the ISO up, the more chance of grain you've got in your scene, so I do tend to keep that as low as possible. Now sharpness, I've got this set at medium because if you set it to high, it can be too high and everything looks too sharp on your edit. But if you set it to low, it generally means you've got to add some sharpening in post. So if I just set it on medium, it just means I've got minimum work to do on these shots in post-production. Colour now, this is a really important one. So I've got mine set at flat, and this just gives me a flat colour profile. So GoPro's own, you'll see the colours are really, really vivid there. What this means is when you come to post-production, you don't have that much control to change these colours. But if you set it to flat mode, you can see everything's looking a bit more unsaturated, and it gives you a bit more control in post-production to really get into the colours and set them to be exactly what you want. So that's a really useful one to have. I don't tend to record raw audio just because most of the time when I'm using my GoPro, I use the Rode Wireless Go, and it doesn't go into the GoPro anyway, it goes into my Zoom. The audio on my GoPro is mainly just for backup, so I don't tend to put raw audio on. Again, I don't really worry about the wind settings either, just because it's just backup audio on the GoPro. I'll always have my Rode Wireless Go, which is an amazing piece of kit. Yeah, these are the buttons I've got. So I've got EV Comp, just in case I need to quickly change the exposure whilst I'm out and about. I've got Hypersmooth, so I can turn that on and off, especially if I'm on my bike or something like that. I definitely want a quick option to be able to get to that. So I've got my lens at the upper left as well, just so I can quickly change which view I've got. Especially handy if I'm on my bike and I want to just get the handlebars, or if then I want to get a wider scene. So that's pretty much of that. And I've got white balance just so I can quickly access that if need be. So that's pretty much it for my standard shooting. And those settings are really useful for, like I was saying, 90% of GoPro situations. Now I've also got an activity mode. Now this is more if I'm doing something which might require a little bit of slow motion, or I'm shooting a bit of B-roll. So what I've got these settings as is, I've got 4K 50. Again, I don't necessarily need 5K for this type of shooting. 4K 50 is perfectly fine. And I've got the 50 FPS just so if I do need to slow something down a little bit in post-production, I've got the option. And just having that extra frame rate just gives it a nice little element when coming to post-production. All the rest of the settings are pretty much the same. Let's just get back. Oops. So yeah, I've got my lens set up as wide. Can't have it as, oh yeah, put that back to Superview. Hypersmooth on again, just especially for B-roll, if I'm getting some nice moving shots, it'll just keep everything nice and stable. Again, not got scheduled capture on, duration or hindsight. It's just not something that I really need. And I mean, hindsight is quite a good thing to have on. It might be worth, just to have as a bonus. You might just miss something, so it is worth maybe just turning on. All my Protune settings, as I was saying earlier, these are the ones where it really makes the footage look cinematic and gives you a lot of control over the footage. So I tend just to keep these the same on all my settings. The most important ones are white balance, bitrate, and sharpness and colour. As long as you've got them settings, your GoPro is going to be looking really great and giving you a lot of control in post-production. And I've got the same shortcuts there. Now I've also got a cinematic mode. Now I tend to use this for if I'm getting a nice wide shot, or if I'm getting shots of me on my own. So a couple of examples is that I've been riding past my GoPro a couple of times and I have it on 5K. And this is just so I can crop in on myself. It gives me more data to work with. You can't have Superview on 5K, so I've just got it on wide mode, which is normally wide enough. And I've got this set at 24 FPS. I do alternate between 24 and 25, but it depends on what I think I'm going to be exporting my end editing. But I just got it set as 24 for my cinematic preset. Got Hypersmooth on. I do tend to turn this off sometimes because genuinely the GoPro is static when I'm doing these sort of shots. If I do have a GoPro on a tripod or something like that, I tend to turn it off because it does crop in a little bit. Schedule capture again turned off, duration turned off. Hindsight turned off, but again, might be quite useful, especially when doing filming on your own. And then again, these are all the same. And then finally, I've got a slow-mo option at 2.7K. Now you can do slow motion at 1080, and then you can end up with 200 FPS. But the problem is I'd rather have the extra resolution so I can crop in if need be. And I don't really need 200 FPS. A lot of the shooting I do is at 60 FPS, so that's normally more than enough for me. And my Canon R6 shoots at 120 FPS, so I very rarely have the choice to go above 120 anyway, so for my purposes 100 is fine. I'd rather sacrifice the frame rate a little bit and get more resolution just in case I do need to crop in. So that's my creative choice there, but of course you guys might have a different option there. I've got wide on my lens, it's just as wide as possible for that particular setting. Got Hypersmooth on. Again, if it's on a tripod, I'd probably have that turned off. And yeah, again, the settings are exactly the same as always. Oops, nope, definitely not do that. So yeah, oops, what are we doing? So yeah, there are my settings on my GoPro. I've not got any more saved yet, but you can save more down here. So you can do video mode. Sometimes it's a bit fidgety. Yep, there we go. And then you can choose your settings to what you want. And then you can give it a suitable name. So you can actually have one set up for cycle, epic, you know, you've got all sorts. And you can also do a custom name too. I've not found out how to actually do a, like name them yourself. I'm not sure if you can do that. So if anyone knows how to name your GoPro presets, that would be amazing if you could let me know just in the comments. And what GoPro settings do you use on your GoPro? Do you have any particular ones you always turn on? Do you have anything you always turn off? I'd love to hear what you guys are shooting, and I'd love to see your settings, just so we can all learn a little bit more from each other. So on my home screen, I've got my option to change my views, because that is one I use quite a lot. Sometimes I just need to get a tighter shot or a wider shot. So that's really useful to be able to quickly access from my screen. I've got exposure comp because sometimes, as I was saying, the GoPro tends to overexpose a little bit, especially in the highlights. So if I am seeing that, I can just knock this down to maybe -1 if need be. Or if I go into a darker scene, maybe a forest, I might want to knock this back to 0, just so we're back at normal. Of course, when I get my ND filters, all these settings will change just a little bit. I've got my white balance just because it's handy just to be able to quickly swap between them. But yeah, put that back to 55. My lights in here are also at 54, so that's as close as we can be. And I've just got my stabilization just in case I ever need that straight away. Especially it's great for if I hop on my bike, I can just tap it on and I know I've got an extra level of stabilization. So those are my GoPro settings. I'd recommend to get the most cinematic look from your GoPro 9 and to also give you as much control in editing as possible. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I'd love to hear what you do with your GoPro, and do you disagree with any of the settings I've got? Would you rather have more frame rate rather than resolution or something like that? I'd love to hear that in the comments below, and if you've got any awesome GoPro shots, I'd love to see them. I hope you have learned something about your GoPro Hero 9 and a little bit more about what all these settings do on the GoPro. If you did like it, please like, comment and subscribe. That would be absolutely amazing. And share it with someone who's just bought a GoPro 9. I'm sure you know someone. That'd be amazing. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe, stay creative. Cheers.